Welcome to A Year of War and Peace. I'm your host, Brian E. Denton. A Year of War and Peace is a daily, year-long, chapter-by-chapter reading of and meditation on Leo Tolstoy's epic novel, War and Peace. In these videos and podcasts, you'll be treated to a free reading of one chapter per day of the novel, plus a reflective essay I've written individually tailored to that day's chapter. These readings are offered for free, though if you'd like to support me, you can do so in one of three ways. First, you could purchase my ebook, A Year of War and Peace. It features the entire novel, plus all of my reflective essays, and it's only $2.99 on Amazon.com. You could also become a patron at patreon.com/BrianEDenton. If you sign up there, you'll receive a sonnet once a month, plus a link to an ebook of my collected sonnets. Finally, if you like, you can make a one-time donation to my PayPal account. The email there is brianedenton@gmail.com. You can also use that email to contact me. I'd be happy to hear from you. Your support is greatly appreciated. Today's reading and reflection is on Chapter 210. Chapter 210. On that bright evening of August 25th, Prince Andrew lay leaning on his elbow in a broken-down shed in the village of Knyazkovo, at the further end of his regiment's encampment. Through a gap in the broken wall, he could see, beside the wooden fence, a row of 30-year-old birches with their lower branches lopped off, a field on which shocks of oats were standing, and some bushes near which rose the smoke of campfires, the soldiers' kitchens. Narrow and burdensome and useless to anyone as his life now seemed, Prince Andrew, on the eve of battle, felt agitated and irritable, as he had done 7 years before, at Austerlitz. He had received and given the orders for next day's battle, and had nothing more to do. But his thoughts, the simplest, clearest, and therefore most terrible thoughts, would give him no peace. He knew that tomorrow's battle would be the most terrible of all he had taken part in, and for the first time in his life the possibility of death presented itself to him, not in relation to any worldly matter or with reference to its effect on others, but simply in relation to himself, to his own soul, vividly, plainly, terribly, and almost as a certainty. And from the height of this perception, all that had previously tormented and preoccupied him suddenly became illumined by a cold white light without shadows, without perspective, without distinction of outline. All life appeared to him like a magic lantern picture at which he had long been gazing by artificial light through a glass. Now he suddenly saw those badly daubed pictures in clear daylight and without a glass. Yes, there they are. Those false images that agitated, enraptured, and tormented me, said he to himself, passing in review the principal pictures of the magic lantern of life, and regarding them now in the cold white daylight of his clear perception of death. There they are, those rudely painted figures that once seemed splendid and mysterious. Glory, the good of society, love of a woman, the fatherland itself. How important these pictures appear to me. With what profound meaning they seem to be filled. And it is all so simple, pale, and crude in the cold white light of this morning, which I feel is dawning for me. The three great sorrows of his life held his attention in particular: his love for a woman, his father's death, and the French invasion which had overrun half Russia. Love, that little girl who seemed to me brimming over with mystic forces. Yes, indeed, I loved her. I made romantic plans of love and happiness with her. Oh, what a boy I was, he said aloud bitterly. Ah, me. I believed in some ideal love which was to keep her faithful to me for a whole year of my absence. Like the gentle dove in the fable, she was to pine apart from me. But it was really much more simple. It was all very simple and horrible. When my father built Bald Hills, he thought the place was his land, his air, his peasants. But Napoleon came and swept him aside, unconscious of his existence, as he might brush a chip from his path, and his Bald Hills and his whole life fell to pieces. Princess Mary says it is a trial sent from above. What is the trial for? When he is not here and will never return. He is not here. For whom then is the trial intended? The fatherland, the destruction of Moscow. And tomorrow I shall be killed. Perhaps not even by a Frenchman, but by one of my own men, by a soldier discharging a musket close to my ear, as one of them did yesterday. And the French will come and take me by head and heels and fling me into a hole, that I may not stink under their noses. And new conditions of life will arise, which will seem quite ordinary to others, and about which I shall know nothing. I shall not exist. He looked at the row of birches, shining in the sunshine, with their motionless green and yellow foliage and white bark. To die, to be killed tomorrow, that I should not exist, that all this should still be, but no me. And the birches, with their light and shade, the curly clouds, the smoke of the campfires, and all that was around him changed and seemed terrible and menacing. A cold shiver ran down his spine. He rose quickly, went out of the shed, and began to walk about. After he had returned, voices were heard outside the shed. "Who's that?" he cried. The red-nosed Captain Timokhin, formerly Dólokhov's squadron commander, but now from lack of officers a battalion commander, shyly entered the shed, followed by an adjutant and the regimental paymaster. Prince Andrew rose hastily, listened to the business they had come about, gave them some further instructions, and was about to dismiss them when he heard a familiar, lisping voice behind the shed. "Devil take it," said the voice of a man stumbling over something. Prince Andrew looked out of the shed and saw Pierre, who had tripped over a pole on the ground and had nearly fallen, coming his way. It was unpleasant to Prince Andrew to meet people of his own set in general, and Pierre especially, for he reminded him of all the painful moments of his last visit to Moscow. "You! What a surprise!" said he. "What brings you here? This is unexpected." As he said this, his eyes and face expressed more than coldness. They expressed hostility, which Pierre noticed at once. He had approached the shed full of animation, but on seeing Prince Andrew's face he felt constrained and ill at ease. "I have come simply, it interests me," said Pierre, who had so often that day senselessly repeated the word interesting. "I wish to see the battle." "Oh, yes? And what do the Masonic brothers say about war? How will they stop it?" said Prince Andrew sarcastically. "Well, and how's Moscow and my people? Have they reached Moscow at last?" he asked seriously. "Yes, they have. Julie Drobetskaya told me so. I went to see them, but missed them. They have gone to your estate near Moscow." That concludes my reading of chapter 210. I will now proceed to my reflection on the same. A Year of War and Peace, Day 210. Be well content. The gravity of death pulls down all worldly concerns to a lowly level. Unfortunately for those unprepared for its inevitable approach, death elevates itself in substitution of such concerns. That's how it feels for Prince Andrew in today's chapter, at any rate. Prince Andrew has nothing left to do. All matters at camp have been settled. He's left alone on the eve of battle with only his thoughts and empty time to pass. Time is death's ambassador. So with each passing moment, his thoughts delve deeper into contemplation of his mortality. He considers that tomorrow's battle just might be the most dangerous of his military career. It's very possible, he reckons, that he'll be killed. In comparison to the terrible thoughts of non-existence, Prince Andrew realizes how petty and inconsequential all his past worries were. He thinks specifically of his relationship with Natasha, his father, and his country. He believed love could sustain a long-distance relationship. Distance, however, severed whatever feeling he believed bound her to him. His father thought he owned Bald Hills. Napoleon snatched that land away, just as he now threatens to snatch Russia itself away from the Russian people. All these concerns now pale in comparison to the subject of his impending death. That all this should still be but not me, he muses. He cannot fathom this horror. He looks to the birch trees, the clouds, the smoke of the campfires, and instead of drawing inspiration from nature, it all seems terrible and menacing to him. This is a man who is not ready for death. Thoughts of his demise so agitate him that he is unable to greet Pierre, his best friend in the whole world, with the joy and welcome natural to friendship. He has only unnatural sarcasm and hostility to offer. Daily Meditation. Do not despise death, but be well content with it, since this too is one of those things that nature wills. Death is one of the operations of nature. Say to thyself, "Come quick to death, lest perchance I too should forget myself." Marcus Aurelius, Meditations. And that concludes my reading of and reflection on Chapter 210 of War and Peace. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks so much for joining me. Remember that if you'd like to support me, you can do so either by purchasing the ebook, Year of War and Peace, becoming a patron at patreon.com, or making a one-time donation at PayPal. The links to all that are down below in the show notes. Tomorrow, we will be reading and reflecting on Chapter 211. I hope you'll join me. Until then, take care of yourselves and others.